Hey there, fellow Potterheads! Get ready to dive deep into the wizarding world like never before. We're about to unravel some of the most mind-boggling plot holes in the Harry Potter universe. Or are they really plot holes? Maybe they're just cleverly disguised mysteries, waiting for a little magic and hocus-pocus to solve them. In this episode, we're focusing on Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, one of the most thrilling, action-packed installments in the series. But even this magical masterpiece isn't without its puzzling plot points that have had fans scratching their heads for years. Buckle up, because we're about to dive into some of the most intriguing mysteries. First up, the twisted, convoluted plan to capture Harry. Voldemort's plan to bring Harry to a graveyard has had fans stumped for years. On the surface, it's almost mind-boggling. Why go through all this trouble when Barty Crouch Jr. could have simply invited Harry to his office, handed him a portkey disguised as a cup of tea or a textbook, and whisked him away? Sounds like a much simpler option, right? Well, let's dig a little deeper and break down a theory that suggests there's more method to the madness than meets the eye. Consider the political and social climate at Hogwarts and across the wizarding world. Voldemort's return was still a closely guarded secret. If Harry had suddenly vanished from the castle, Dumbledore and the Ministry of Magic would have been all over it, launching a full-blown investigation. A random disappearance, especially one involving Harry, with his history of attracting danger, would have set off alarm bells. Plus, Hogwarts was protected by powerful enchantments, and Dumbledore's presence alone was enough to make any dark wizard think twice. Even Barty Crouch Jr., with all his cunning, couldn't risk exposing himself too soon by acting too hastily. Timing was everything. Maybe Dumbledore would have caught wind of a portkey being used in the castle, and that would have thrown Voldemort's plans into chaos. Then there's the portkey itself. These things aren't exactly discreet. They cause a magical disturbance whenever they're activated. Not only could Dumbledore have sensed it, but other staff members or ministry officials at the tournament would have been on high alert. Not to mention, the enchantments protecting the castle might have interfered with the portkey's function. It's highly possible a portkey would have been blocked altogether, raising suspicions and alerting Dumbledore before anything could even happen. And then, enter the Triwizard Tournament. It was the perfect cover. By manipulating the Goblet of Fire to select Harry as a champion, Barty Crouch Jr. pulled off the ultimate sleight of hand. Harry was thrust into a series of dangerous tasks, all while being isolated from the usual school routine. Crouch Jr. had legitimate opportunities to steer Harry without anyone raising an eyebrow. As one of the judge's aides, Moody had unrestricted access to every task, subtly influencing the outcomes to guarantee Harry's victory, and ultimately guiding him toward the final task where the portkey trap awaited. But there's more. The tournament didn't just serve as a cover for abduction. It was also a psychological game. Voldemort wasn't just testing Harry physically, he was pushing him to his breaking point, watching how Harry responded to fear, stress, and danger. This was about more than just a fight for survival. It was Voldemort's twisted experiment, designed to break Harry mentally and emotionally before he finally came face to face with him. The Dark Lord wanted Harry exhausted, vulnerable, and ripe for the trauma of witnessing Cedric's murder and facing him in the flesh. And of course, there's Voldemort's flair for the dramatic. A simple kidnapping via teacup wouldn't have been nearly enough. The grand resurrection needed to be a spectacle. It was about making a statement. Voldemort wasn't just returning to power. He was showing the world that he was back, stronger than ever, and ready to make his enemies fear him once again. The graveyard scene wasn't just about regaining strength. It was about forcing Harry to witness his rebirth in the most twisted, memorable way possible. Voldemort thrives on spectacle, and the Triwizard Tournament was the perfect stage for this dark drama to unfold. At the end of the day, this plot wasn't the result of sloppy planning or magical loopholes. No, it was an orchestrated masterpiece, a symphony of chaos designed to outsmart Dumbledore, isolate Harry, and create the perfect emotional turning point that would haunt him for the rest of the series. The tournament was the ultimate weapon, a brilliant blend of psychological manipulation, danger, and drama. What do you think? Does this sound like the work of a genius? Or is there an even better explanation out there? Now, let's move on to one of the most talked about mysteries in the Harry Potter world, the thestrals. These eerie, skeletal horses that pull the Hogwarts carriages are shrouded in mystery, visible only to those who have witnessed and fully grasped the meaning of death. Fans have been utterly baffled when Harry couldn't see them after witnessing Cedric's tragic death at the end of Goblet of Fire. Even more puzzling, Harry saw his parents' murder as a baby, but still couldn't see the thestrals until the beginning of Order of the Phoenix. What's going on here? Let's unravel this theory and see if it holds up. First, let's dig into the idea of comprehension. Witnessing death isn't just about seeing someone take their last breath. You have to truly understand, deep in your bones, what death really means. The irreversible finality, the heavy weight of loss. Baby Harry saw the flash of green light when Voldemort killed his mother, but he was a toddler. His little mind couldn't possibly grasp the significance of what was happening. So no thestrals for baby Harry. That makes sense, right? But here's where it gets juicy. What about Cedric's death? It's a much more complex situation. Harry was devastated, no doubt, but let's face it, the chaos and terror of that night kept his brain in survival mode. The graveyard was a nightmare of Death Eaters, Voldemort's return, and life-or-death situations. Harry barely had time to process what had happened. Cedric's death, while horrifying, was almost lost in the overwhelming terror of that night. Now here's the key theory. Harry didn't truly process Cedric's death until much later, likely over the summer. When he returned to Hogwarts at the start of Order of the Phoenix, that's when the emotional weight of it hit him. By then, he fully understood what had happened. Cedric was gone, and Harry was finally facing the reality of death as a teenager who could truly comprehend its significance. But hold on, there's more. This theory has a magical twist. Thestrals are creatures deeply tied to the concept of mortality. It's possible that Hogwarts' enchantments, or even Harry's own emotional defenses, kept him from seeing them until he was ready. Magic in the wizarding world isn't just about spells. It's deeply connected to emotions, intent, and even the mind. Maybe the thestrals only appear when your mind is ready to accept death in all its grim finality. Harry wasn't just struggling with his emotions. His own magical defenses might have been at play here, shielding him from seeing them until he was emotionally prepared. And let's not overlook the psychological side of things. Harry is famously stubborn about dealing with his emotions. We all remember the angst of Order of the Phoenix. His refusal to fully accept Cedric's death could have prevented him from seeing the thestrals. Once Harry began to accept the harsh realities of life, especially with Voldemort's return and all the darkness that followed, the veil was lifted and the thestrals appeared, ready to guide him. So here it is. Harry couldn't see thestrals until he was emotionally ready to face the truth of death. It's a beautifully bittersweet metaphor for growing up and learning to cope with loss, a journey we all go through in our own way. And honestly, J.K. Rowling's handling of this detail is both subtle and powerful, making it one of the most poignant aspects of the entire series. What do you think? Does this theory make sense, or is there another explanation that could top it? Okay, and now we move on to the great mystery of how the legendary Auror Mad-Eye Moody, a wizard so paranoid he probably checked under his socks for Death Eaters, was bested by Barty Crouch Jr. It seems almost impossible, right? The guy had dark detectors everywhere, a magical eye that could see through walls, and invisibility cloaks, and decades of combat experience. So how on earth did a supposedly dead Death Eater get the jump on him? Here's a wild theory that actually makes some sense. First, we have to give credit where it's due. Barty Crouch Jr. was no ordinary wizard. He was described as one of Voldemort's most loyal and talented followers, essentially a prodigy in dark magic. He wasn't just a thug with a wand, he was cunning, skilled, and had grown up learning from one of the most cutthroat political families in the wizarding world. And unlike most Death Eaters, he was fanatically devoted to Voldemort, making him dangerous and relentless. So how did he do it? The key lies in Barty's access to inside information and psychological manipulation. Barty's father, Barty Crouch Sr., was a high-ranking official at the Ministry and likely had access to sensitive information, including Moody's routines, whereabouts, and even the protections surrounding his home. Given Barty Jr.'s brilliance, he probably studied Moody's tendencies and figured out when the Auror would be most vulnerable. But sheer force wouldn't be enough to beat Mad Eye. So here's the sneaky part. Dark detectors like sneakoscopes can be fooled with advanced countercharms, and who better to know those tricks than a Death Eater with a knack for dark magic? Barty may have temporarily neutralized or enchanted Moody's defenses to give him a false sense of security. The attack itself was likely a combination of stealth, surprise, and an element of psychological trickery. Imagine this. Barty Crouch Jr. polyjuices himself into someone Moody knows and trusts, perhaps an old colleague or even a ministry official, most likely his father. He knocks on Moody's door under the pretense of important business. Moody, despite his paranoia, opens the door but keeps his wand at the ready. Barty's disguise buys him just a fraction of a second, and that's all a skilled Death Eater needs. Boom. Stunning spell. Maybe even a combination of a blasting curse and a binding charm to keep Moody down long enough to subdue him. Once Moody was disarmed and incapacitated, Barty would have acted fast to stash the real Moody in that infamous trunk and start guzzling Polyjuice Potion. Another critical factor? Moody's injuries. By the time of Goblet of Fire, Moody is a physically compromised wizard. He's got a magical leg, a heavily scarred body, and lingering trauma from years of battle. Even the toughest fighter can be caught off guard, especially if they're not in peak physical condition. And let's not forget the biggest irony. Moody's paranoia might have worked against him. His obsession with traps and defenses may have made him overconfident in his fortress of dark detectors. He likely didn't anticipate that someone could bypass them altogether through a carefully planned ambush. In the end, it was probably a perfect storm. Insider knowledge, clever magical sabotage, psychological deception, and Barty Crouch Jr.'s ruthless efficiency. It's a testament to just how dangerous and cunning Voldemort's followers could be. Even the toughest wizard could fall if the right plan was in place. What do you think? Plausible? Or does Moody deserve a rematch? Staying on the subject of Moody, or should we call him Barty Crouch Jr.? Another big question. How on earth did Dumbledore not figure out that Moody wasn't Moody? I mean, we're talking about Albus Dumbledore here, the guy who could read between the lines of a lie faster than most wizards could wave a wand. But when you start piecing it all together, it's actually kind of genius how Barty Crouch Jr. managed to pull it off. Let's get into it. First of all, we've got the Polyjuice Potion. That stuff is no joke. It's not like slapping on a glamour charm or tossing on some robes and hoping for the best. It's a full-on magical transformation. It doesn't just change how you look. It alters your voice, your physical mannerisms, even the way you move. And Barty Crouch Jr., being the crafty Death Eater he was, wouldn't have just relied on the potion to do all the work. You can almost picture him in some dingy hideout practicing every little thing. Moody's growl, the way he limps, how he barks, constant vigilance, like it's the wizarding equivalent of good morning. By the time he got to Hogwarts, the man had the performance of a lifetime ready to go. Now, let's not forget that the real Alastor Moody was famously a bit of a loner. The guy didn't exactly ooze warmth and approachability, did he? Moody was the type to sit in a corner, nursing a drink while staring everyone down like they were about to hex him. People respected him, sure, but he wasn't exactly the life of the party. If the imposter Moody was a bit quiet or didn't engage in lengthy conversations, that would have seemed perfectly normal. Moody wasn't the kind of person to chat about the weather or go on about his favorite type of coffee. If anything, he'd probably cut conversations short with a gruff comment like, "I've got better things to do than gossip." It's genius when you think about it. By keeping to himself, Crouch Jr. avoided giving anyone too much to scrutinize. Even Dumbledore might have chalked up any odd moments to Moody's naturally reclusive nature. Imagine Moody brushing past Dumbledore in the corridors, muttering something about needing to prepare for the next lesson. Dumbledore, busy with the Triwizard Tournament, probably thought, well, that's Moody for you. Moody's whole reputation was built on being a little gruff, a little strange, and very paranoid. If Barty didn't seem overly friendly or chatty, that wasn't suspicious. It was just Moody being Moody. And speaking of paranoia, let's talk about trust. Dumbledore trusted the real Moody implicitly. They'd fought together, side by side, in the original Order of the Phoenix. Moody had a reputation as one of the best aurors in the business, a man who dedicated his life to taking down dark wizards. If you've got that kind of history with someone, the thought that they might not be who they say they are wouldn't even cross your mind. Dumbledore wasn't paranoid. He believed in his people. That's part of what made him a great leader. It's also, ironically, what made him vulnerable to a trick like this. And then there's the timing. The Triwizard Tournament was a circus, let's be honest. Dumbledore had a million things going on. International guests to manage, dangerous magical creatures running loose, a tournament full of high-risk tasks, and of course Harry. Because there's always Harry, finding himself smack in the middle of trouble. Dumbledore was juggling so much that he might not have had the bandwidth to really scrutinize Moody's behavior. If Moody seemed a little off, Dumbledore might have just put it down to the stress of the tournament or the weight of the job. Let's not forget how good Barty Crouch Jr. was at keeping up the act. He didn't just sit back and hope no one noticed anything. He went out of his way to make himself seem like the perfect mentor. He gave Harry advice for the tournament tasks, advice that was always spot on. He even had those moments, like giving Neville that herbology book, that made him seem like a surprisingly thoughtful teacher. It was all part of the plan, of course, but it worked. To everyone around him, he looked like he was invested in the students and in helping them succeed. Even the darker things, like Imperiusing Crumb during the maze, fit the character. The real Moody was a seasoned auror who'd done things most people couldn't stomach. If the imposter Moody went a bit extreme, Dumbledore might have thought, well, that's what makes Moody so effective. And here's the kicker. The real Moody was alive and locked in that blasted trunk the whole time. Barty had access to everything. Moody's habits, his routines, even personal quirks that would have helped him maintain the illusion. And because Moody was still alive, there wasn't that magical something's missing vibe you might get if someone had been truly killed and replaced. So, when you put it all together, the perfection of the Polyjuice Potion, Moody's naturally aloof and reclusive nature, Dumbledore's trust, and the sheer chaos of the Triwizard Tournament, it's not so surprising that even Dumbledore didn't catch on. Honestly, it's a testament to how cunning and meticulous Barty Crouch Jr. was. And isn't that part of what makes the whole reveal so jaw-dropping? You didn't see it coming, just like Dumbledore didn't. Well, that's been an interesting episode, but that's a wrap for today's deep dive into the Goblet of Fire plot holes. Thanks for tuning in to Theories Amore, your hub for uncovering the deepest lore and wildest theories. Be sure to check out our other videos, from hidden magical secrets to untold character stories. Until next time, keep your wands at the ready and your minds open. This is Theories Amore, signing off. Mischief managed.